What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we've got quite a bit of news, such as event number 2 of the NVA has concluded. Which teams are top of their respective conference, which teams came out on top this past weekend, and which teams were left in the mud. A lot of teams had a lot of big-time wins and quite a bit of upsets as well, so I gotta recap that. Also, we have some transfer news. Got plenty more transfer news where that came from, as we had quite a bit of notable names, and we have some names that I talked about that are in the transfer portal and that have found a home. Which players have transferred where? We'll have to find out in a little bit. And Irvine Valley topped Orange Coast College when it mattered most, as they won the Orange Empire Conference Championship Tournament. Congratulations to former Set Point guest Ryan Windish and the Lasers on defeating Orange Coast and handing them their first and only loss of the season. And we've got some high school boys volleyball happening, as the CIF Southern Section Division I Championship had quite a turn of events in one of their semifinals matches. All of that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon. Happy Memorial Day to everyone. Thank you to all of our veterans that have served, and thank you to those that sacrificed their lives for this beautiful day. We couldn't appreciate it anymore, and I am forever grateful and in their debt of all veterans. And if you are a veteran, or you are a former veteran, or you're currently serving in the military, this little applause button is for you. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action that happened this past weekend. But first, we have a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor, as of right now, is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organizations. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you live in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance. If you love your sport, you may get that second opportunity you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow Southern California Warriors on social media, on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and if you go to Facebook and go to the search bar, just type in the word Southern, the word California, and then the word Warriors, and then poof, you'll be able to follow them and the action that they bring. And we definitely appreciate them being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And if you want to follow IE Sports Radio on social media, you can follow them on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And then on Facebook, where you go to the search bar, type in the word IE, the word sports, and then the word radio. And then poof, you're following them and liking them and getting updates and notifications on when the shows will be going live and any other IE Sports Radio news. So there's that right there. So now, without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action, as we had quite a bit of volleyball news. Even though the NCAA tournament or tournaments are pretty much over and done with, we have the NVA happening, the National Volleyball Association, which I still can't believe there's such thing. So going into event number 2, here were the conference standings. We'll start with the American Conference. In first place, the Utah Stingers and the Las Vegas Ramblers both were in first place at 3-0. Both actually had won 9 out of 10 sets, and both had 9 points. In third place, we had the Los Angeles Blaze at 2-1. They had won 7 out of 13 sets, and they had 5 points. The Texas Tyrants were in fourth place as they were 1-2 overall. They had only won 3. They had won 3 sets, but lost 7 out of a grand total of, I believe it was 13 for only 3 points. And then bringing up the rear was the Chicago Untouchables. That was 0-3, a team that only won 3 sets and that only had 1 point. The point system is kind of interesting just because it is a good tiebreaker scenario, and then also the sets really do matter just in case a team ties with another team in the same conference, so I guess that's something worth noting. I don't know the full-on tiebreaker, and I don't know the number of sets each team has played, but there's that. And then, my mistake, everybody, the Las Vegas Ramblers and the Utah Stingers each have played 10 sets, and both of those teams have won 9 out of 10 sets, not 9 out of 13 sets. The Los Angeles Blaze have won 7 out of 13 sets, while the Texas Tyrants have only won 3 out of 10 sets, and the Chicago Untouchables have won 3 out of 12 sets. And then in the National Conference, we have Team Freedom of New Jersey/New York in first place at 3-0. They have won 9 out of 10 sets, and they have 9 points. In second place is Southern Exposure, representing, I believe they don't really have like an exact location, but I do know they're pretty much from like the Florida area, maybe from the South area. Regardless, they're 2-1. They're in second place in the National Conference, and they have won 7 out of 12 sets as they have 5 points overall. In third place, we have the Ontario Matadors as they are 1-2, and they have only won 6 out of 13 sets for a grand total of 4 points. And then in fourth and fifth place, bringing up the rear, are the Orange County Stunners and the Dallas Tornadoes, who are both 0-3, and both have only won 1 out of 10 sets for a grand total of 0 points. So it's been a little bit of a tough time for the Stunners. The Stunners actually lost one of their best players, Nick Amato, to a foot injury, but he is back. He pretty much, I don't know if he's fully back, but he no longer is in the boot, which is really good. And the Dallas Tornadoes are an expansion team, which is great. Like, I'm glad we're getting more expansion teams happening, considering we want to grow the game of volleyball and have more professional volleyball teams, which is cool. Unfortunately, it's just been a little bit of a tough time for the Dallas Tornadoes just because they're still getting used to playing volleyball against all these other experienced programs, and they're also facing other experienced players as well. So there's that. Now let's jump on into event number 2. So the first match that happened were the Dallas Tornadoes versus the Chicago Untouchables. Two teams that were pretty much long yearning for a win, as both teams were 0-3. But at the end of the day, the Chicago Untouchables emerged victorious. They won the first set Dallas won the first set 25-19. Then Chicago won the second set 25-22. Then they won the third set 25-22. And then lastly, they won the fourth set 25-23. So despite losing those 3 sets consecutively, Dallas really made Chicago earn that win. And that's kind of the thing about an expansion team and not having any wins. But then again, Chicago didn't have any wins going in as well. So there's that right there. So good for Chicago. They got the first victory of the season between these first 2 events. Then we had the Battle of the Undefeateds between the Utah Stingers and the Las Vegas Ramblers. Those two were atop the American Conference, but at the end of the day, the Las Vegas Ramblers took the victory in close fashion, winning in 5 sets. The Ramblers won the first set 25-22, and then they won the second set 25-19. Then the Stingers took the third set 25-18, and then they also took the fourth set 25-19. And then in very close fashion, in the fifth set, Las Vegas took the fifth set 15-13 and the match, which was absolutely incredible. So good for the Ramblers on picking up that huge win over their conference rival. So that was big. And then the next matchup featured Southern Exposure versus the Texas Tyrants. At the end of the day, the Tyrants won the matchup. They swept Southern Exposure 3-0. They won the first set 25-22, then the second set 25-19, and then the third set 25-23. And the next matchup we had was the Orange County Stunners versus the Ontario Matadors. The Stunners had come in with 0 wins, while the Matadors were looking to build off of their first win from the first event. But this time it was the Orange County Stunners that emerged from the ashes and took the victory. They swept the Matadors 3-0. The Stunners took the first set 25-21, then they took the second set 25-16, and then the third set, the Stunners took that set 25-19. So first win of the season goes to Orange County, which is absolutely amazing. Good job for them. Tough luck for the Matadors. So there's that. And then the nightcap matchup, or the match that concluded the day at Atlantic City, was the host team, Team Freedom, taking on the Los Angeles Blaze. And at the end of the day, Team Freedom emerged victorious and stayed undefeated, edging out the Los Angeles Blaze in 5 sets. The Blaze took the first set 25-16, then Team Freedom took the second set 25-19, then the Blaze took set number 3 25-22, and then Team Freedom squeaked out the fourth set 26-24, and then the Blaze won, Team Freedom took the fifth set 15-13, but it certainly wasn't an easy matchup. So Team Freedom had to work for that victory, which is kudos to the Blaze. But at the end of the day, Team Freedom is still undefeated, so good for them. Now let's jump over to day number 2, where the first day was the first game of the first match of Saturday was between Southern Exposure and the Dallas Tornadoes. At the end of the day, Southern Exposure was able to edge out the Tornadoes in 5 sets. Southern Exposure took the first set 25-18, then the Tornadoes took set number 2 25-23. Then in set number 3, the Tornadoes took that set 25-20, and they were actually up 2-1 in the match. So good for Dallas. They were battling, but Southern Exposure took the fourth set 25-22. Contrary to popular belief, Southern Exposure did take that fourth set. It was just entered in wrong, so that's kind of on the NVA for doing that, so yeah. And then the fifth set was very tight, but Southern Exposure eked out that fifth set 16-14, which was absolutely amazing. So tough luck for the Dallas Tornadoes, but good win for Southern Exposure. Then we had ourselves another 5-setter. This time it went to the Chicago Untouchables and the Ontario Matadors, as the Untouchables edged the Matadors 3-2. The Untouchables won the first set 26-24. Then the Matadors won the second set 25-22. Then in set 3, the Matadors won that 25-22. And then set 4, the Untouchables won that 25-22. And then in set 5, it wasn't really close, as Chicago won that fifth set 15-19, and they won the match. So that's 2 in a row for them. So good job, Chicago. Unfortunately for the Matadors, they lost their second straight match, which has kind of been a little bit of a bummer for them, but they were close. Unfortunately, that fifth set is kind of where they ran out of gas, which is kind of common. Then we had probably the biggest shocker of the event, as we had the Orange County Stunners stunning the Las Vegas Ramblers in 4 sets, winning 3-1. The Stunners won set 1 25-17, and then they also won set 2 25-22. Then the Ramblers, being the undefeated team that they were, took the third set 25-17, but then Orange County rebounded and took the fourth set 25-22, handing the Ramblers their first loss of the season, which is quite impressive. Good job for Orange County. I'm glad they were able to pull out that dub, and now they've won 2 in a row, so there's that. Well, at that point they had won 2 in a row, but I'll get to that a little bit later. So next matchup we had was the Los Angeles Blaze versus the Texas Tyrants. The Tyrants took the victory, winning 3-1. They won the first set 25-14, and they also won the second set 25-18. Then the third set, the Blaze was able to rally back and take that third set 28-26. And then the Tyrants took set number 4, 25-19, winning the match. So big win for the Tyrants. Then in the nightcap matchup, or the final match of the Saturday event, it was Team Freedom and the Utah Stingers. The Freedom were undefeated going into that match, while the Stingers were coming off of their first loss of the season to the Las Vegas Ramblers. At the end of the day, Team Freedom was able to take the victory. The Stingers took the first set 25-18, but Team Freedom took the second set 25-22. The Stingers then took set number 3 25-20, and they were up 2-1 the match. And then Team Freedom just steamrolled the Stingers in set 4, 25-15. And then set 5, it was not even close, as Team Freedom took that fifth set 15-6, as they remain undefeated at 5-0, which was huge for them, while the Stingers unfortunately suffered their second straight loss, which is unfortunate for them, but life goes on. As we say hello to Mr. Davidson Crooks, thank you for popping in the chat room. I appreciate it. Just talking about some NVA. Yes, NVA, not NBA, as it's the National Volleyball Association, and it's a beautiful thing, actually. It comes from all over the regions. Like, there's a team from the East Coast, there are teams from down south, and then there's teams from the West Coast as well. So it's a great way to help grow the game. So there's that. So thank you again for popping in, Davidson. You can check out Davidson Crooks and Interius Lock on their show Fast Break every Sunday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They do a great job with their show, and I appreciate all the coverage they have of the NBA, WNBA, and even college hoops. So great job on yesterday's show, even though I didn't get to really hear too much of it because I went to dinner, but I'll have to listen back to it. So now we move on to day number 3 of event number 2, as the first matchup included the Texas Tyrants and the Dallas Tornadoes, the Battle of Texas. But at the end of the day, the Texas Tyrants took the victory as they won in straight sets, 3-0. The Tyrants took the first set 25-17, and then they took the second set 25-21. And then in the third set, the Tyrants took that set 25-14, completing the sweep. Impressive victory, or impressive weekend overall for the Tyrants, as they actually, I believe that if my math is correct, and it should be more times than not, the Tyrants actually won all 3 of their matches this weekend. So that was a huge weekend for Texas, and they are on the come-up. I will say this about Dallas. They did lose all 3 of their matches, and they still have yet to win a match this season, but they're at least getting up there. They're at least winning sets, and they're at least doing all they can to try to get the win. So there's that for Dallas. Like, you can't cry over spilt milk. And Texas is just on a hot streak. They've won 3 in a row. I think they've won 4 actually, but I couldn't find their win streak. But regardless, the Tyrants are red hot as of late. So the next match we had was the Chicago Untouchables versus Southern Exposure. The Untouchables took the win as they dropped the first set 25-20 against Southern Exposure. Then they won the second set in very close fashion, 29-27. And then set 3, the Untouchables won that 25-22. And then the Untouchables won set 4, 25-20, securing them the win. I also want to believe that Chicago also went 3-0 this past weekend. So very impressive stuff from Chicago as they finished the weekend 3-0 after they went 0-3 the previous week. So good for the Untouchables. So then we had the third match of the evening, as we had the Utah Stingers taking on the Orange County Stunners. The Stunners had won 2 in a row, while the Stingers had lost 2 in a row going into that match. But at the end of the day, the Stingers were able to grind out the victory, winning in 5 sets, winning 3-2. The Stunners won the first set 25-23, and then the Stingers won set number 2 25-21, and then they won set 3 25-22. And then the Stunners were able to stay alive in set number 4 and force a 5th set as they took set 4 27-25. And then in the 5th set, the Stingers were able to just edge out the Stunners in very close fashion as they won that 5th set 15-13, as the Stingers finally broke through. They finally snapped their two-game losing streak while snapping the Stunners' two-game winning streak in the process. So good for the Stunners, or good for the Stunners and the Stingers. The Stunners actually are looking much better than they did in the previous week, and that's most likely because they probably got Nick Amato back. I don't know if he's playing, but it is good to hear that he is most likely close to 100%, so good for him. And then the fourth matchup of Sunday was between the Ontario Matadors and Team Freedom. Now keep in mind, Team Freedom had come in with a 5-0 record, and they had the home court advantage, because this whole event was being played at Atlantic City. While Ontario had lost 2 straight matches in this event, and it was basically a mismatch. But at the end of the day, Ontario stunned Team Freedom, winning 3-0. The Matadors took the first set 27-25, and then they won the second set 25-20, and then in set 3, the Matadors won that 25-15, handing Team Freedom their first loss of the season, which is absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe Ontario won that one. So when I was recapping this, I'm like, wow, Ontario. And keep in mind, they had a 1-4 record going into this matchup. So I don't know what happened with Team Freedom, but what can you do? And that's kind of the beauty of this whole volleyball thing, because anything can happen on any week. It's kind of like the NFL, any given weekend. So that's really cool that the Matadors were able to get that victory over Team Freedom. So it just goes to show you that no team is invincible. So there's that. And then the last match of the event was the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on the Los Angeles Blaze. The Ramblers swept the Blaze, winning 3-0. The Ramblers won the first set 25-15, and then they also won the second set in close fashion, 25-23. And then set number 3, the Ramblers defeated the Blaze 25-21, earning the sweep and going 2-1 this whole weekend. So good for them. It wasn't really a bad weekend for the Ramblers, as looking at the conferences as of right now, this is only their wins and losses. I didn't get a chance to plug in their sets won or their overall point total. But regardless, Las Vegas, in the American Conference, Las Vegas is in first place at 5-1, which is good. And then tied for second in terms of records is Utah and Texas, both at 4-2. Then in fourth place, we have Chicago at 3-3. And then bringing up the rear in the American Conference is the Los Angeles Blaze, as they are 2-4. But you gotta give props to the Chicago Untouchables, as they went 3-0, and they're still not out of winning the conference, but they still have a ways to go. The only way they could win the conference is if everything pretty much goes their way. Las Vegas loses out, Chicago wins out. I imagine there's going to be playoffs as well. Yes, playoffs? You're kidding me. Playoffs? Yes, playoffs indeed. But just to recap, Las Vegas is still in first place at 5-1. Utah and Texas both have the same records at 4-2. Chicago is 3-3, and then Los Angeles is 2-4. Back to the National Conference, we have Team Freedom still in first place at 5-1. They are just rolling past everybody. Then in second place, we had Southern Exposure at 3-3. It was a little bit of a rough weekend for Southern Exposure, only winning one match, but they're still growing. Ontario and Orange County are both tied for third place, as both teams have a 2-4 record. Orange County actually really came to play, as they won 2 matches, and they almost won a third one, but unfortunately they dropped that heartbreaker of a 5th set to Utah. But they made up, but it doesn't outweigh the negative, or it doesn't outweigh the positives, because they beat the Las Vegas Ramblers, which was undefeated going into that weekend. So good for Orange County. And then Ontario pulling off that major upset against Team Freedom was absolutely amazing. So I gotta give kudos to Ontario as well. They're still trying. Like, I don't know what the prerequisite is for making the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to be doing like every team participates, or if it's just the top 4, or the top 4 from each conference, or the top 2 from each conference, or the top 3 from each conference. Regardless, we'll have to wait and see when it comes to the postseason. And then Dallas is bringing up the rear in the National Conference, and they're bringing up the rear in terms of the entire NVA, as they are 0-6. But again, they're an expansion team. Like, we can't fault them too much for it, because they're an expansion team, and some of these players that have been playing in the NVA have played a lot longer than them, and they've gotten accustomed to their team, so it's a little tough for them, considering they haven't had time to like gel, and they haven't had time to like go over strategies and whatnot. So it's unfortunate for the Dallas Tornadoes. As we welcome in Marcus Los Great, as he's here to give you what you want. He's here to give you what you need, and he's going to do it in a crispy iSports Radio black tea, or a crispy white tea. Regardless, thank you for popping in, Marcus. I appreciate you. Just recapping some NVA. And yes, NVA, not NBA. NVA. So there is one more event when it comes to the NVA. That is going to be on June 11th through June 13th. Unfortunately, I don't know where the event is taking place. I want to say it's actually taking place in Las Vegas, but I am not entirely sure, because their website is gone all hunky-doris on me, or wonky Carrie Wampus on me, which unfortunately is bad, but it is what it is. So, but thank you to Atlantic City for hosting the NVA events, and Atlantic City being in New Jersey and whatnot. So we appreciate you hosting, and thank you to Team Freedom for hosting. So that's going to do it for the NVA. So there were some good little matches going on, and I'm happy we didn't have a whole bunch of teams just dominating. So there's that right there. And the first event took place at the Pierce Sports Center, which I imagine that is in California. Yes, it's in San Bernardino, California. So that's where the Pierce Sports Center took place. So I imagine it's going to take place in maybe Las Vegas. If anything, it's probably not going to take place in California. And I imagine my guess is either it's going to be in Vegas or it's going to be in Texas. But unfortunately, their website is just going all over the place. Their schedule is just not up and running, and so it is being played at the Pierce Sports Center. So I guess their standings aren't, the NVA standings aren't fixed, but I guess they're all playing back at the Pierce Sports Center, which is kind of odd. You went from Pierce Sports Center to Atlantic City, back to Pierce Sports Center. So basically from California to New Jersey, back to California, which, I don't know. If I were the NVA, I would have probably had everything like, I would have had like a different sports site. But who knows? I digress. So that's that for the NVA and the NVA talk. If there's any other NVA news, I will let you all know about that. But for right now, we're closing the book on the NVA. So now let's jump to the California Community College Athletic Association, or the 3C2A, where we had the Orange Empire Conference Championship happening between Orange Coast College and Irvine Valley College, as both teams met in the championship match. And this actually happened on a Wednesday, so The first set between Irvine Valley and Orange Coast was quite tight. It was neck and neck the entire way, and then Orange Coast led 25-22, or OCC. I'm just going to refer them to their abbreviation. So OCC led 25-22, and then 2 straight points from IVC gave them set point at 24-23. And eventually, IVC took the first set 26-24. And that right there, winning that close set was a very, very key turning point for IVC. I feel winning that first set was what set the tone for the Lasers, because winning a tight set like that against a superior team or a team that's better than you is huge when it comes to momentum and when it comes to your mentality and whatnot. It gives you the confidence to say, oh, we can actually win. We can actually beat this team, which was absolutely amazing. And then in the second set, IVC just had that same momentum, and they just pretty much ran away with that second set, winning it 25-17. I had never seen IVC played so complete against OCC. OCC just looked really out of it. They were hitting the ball out of bounds. They were getting blocked. But IVC was just doing everything correct. They were serving tough. They were passing the ball better. It was just not OCC's day. And in the defense of OCC, there were some questionable calls or questionable missed calls, like missed net violations, because I did see the net move, and their OCC's coach was not happy. Their entire coaching staff was not happy. They were wondering, the net was moving, but they were wondering why there was no call, and I don't know. I'm not one to judge a referee and its decisions and its non-decisions. But I'll also say this: referees are human, and then they're always going to miss some calls. This kind of makes me wish that there was instant replay happening, and eventually there's going to be instant replay in every sort of volleyball match, whether it's in junior college or high school volleyball. At the end of the day, it's going to be instant replay is going to take over everything. So there's that right there, and OCC was down 2-0 against the Lasers. The third set looked as if IVC was going to sweep OCC, as they actually led 15-12 at one point, I believe, and then OCC actually started to get it together. They were hitting the ball better, they were passing better, they were just playing better defense, and eventually OCC took that third set 25-22. It was a little bit closer than it needed to be, but OCC got the job done. And then the fourth set, IVC just was able to just shake off losing that fourth set, or that third set, and as they were able to just dominate throughout most of the set. Again, they were just serving the ball better. They were just passing better. They just did everything better when it came to playing the sport of volleyball. And IVC was able to take that fourth set 25-17, and they were able to defeat Orange Coast College to win the Orange Empire Conference tournament. This is technically, I don't know if we could classify this as a championship, but this is kind of the best way to give all these players a season, because there weren't any state championships, and honestly, it's the best thing happening because not a whole lot of teams got to play this season. Long Beach City didn't get to play, El Camino didn't get to play, Moore Park only got to play 3 times this season, Santa Monica didn't get to play. Not a whole lot of teams in the 3C2A got to play, except for the Orange County teams. Not even the San Diego teams got to play. So it is what it is, unfortunately, and it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see a full season, because some of those athletes were working hard, and the fact that some of the schools had to opt out because of COVID and whatnot was very heartbreaking. And eventually the 3C2A just said, nope, we're not going to have state championships. So the Orange Empire Conference coaches basically just got together and said, let's just have ourselves our own little conference tournament and whatnot. So there's that. So as for the statistics, leading Irvine Valley in the victory was JT Demure, as he had 12 kills. He only had one Or no, he didn't have one hitting error. He had 3 hitting errors, but he hit 360, so that's very impressive. And then Colin Chillingworth had 10 kills. He didn't have the greatest night in terms of hitting percentage. He only hit 192. He had 5 hitting errors, but he still got the job done. It wasn't like a hero effort. Like one player was able to carry the team. Multiple players were able to do their part. And then Trevor Weinert added 9 kills, only 1 hitting error. And then also we had Julio Gutierrez having 6 kills, and then Garrett Schnitker had 5 kills. So there was that for Irvine Valley. Unfortunately, Orange Coast's statistics weren't added, which sucks because I don't think I got some of their statistics, but I don't think they're official. I don't think they're accurate. All I could just tell y'all is that what's his face? Huh? Calvin Sanborn had quite a handful of kills, and that kid's going to Long Beach State. And believe it or not, he actually attended Santa Barbara City College, and then he transferred over to Orange Coast, so he took quite the steep trip down from Santa Barbara over to Orange County, which is quite impressive. So I commend him for that. So good for him. Yeah, but Calvin Sanborn and Troy Culp and Carter Depew also had their big hits for Orange Coast College or OCC, while that was it. That was pretty much that. I didn't get their statistics. All I could tell you is that OCC played probably their worst game of the season, and this seems to happen quite a bit when it comes to undefeated teams in the 3C2A, as whenever a team, there has not been an undefeated team in 3C2A men's volleyball since probably 2004. In the mid 2000s. I'm not entirely sure, but it's been quite a while since there was an undefeated team in 3C2A men's volleyball. 2019 Orange OCC was undefeated, and then they lost in the state semifinals to IVC. And then in 2018, Long Beach City was undefeated, and then they lost to Los Angeles Pierce. I just don't think there's ever going to be an undefeated men's volleyball team in the 3C2A. But again, going undefeated and winning a championship of any sort is really tough. Even if it's one that doesn't truly matter. Even though the Orange Empire Conference isn't the same as winning the state tournament, it's still something. It's still some sort of bragging rights. But it is what it is. And Marcus says it's too hard. It's too hard mentally, and it's too hard mentally because you basically have to go undefeated and then win the championship. And we also have the example of Gonzaga men's basketball losing in the championship match to Baylor, and then we also have Wisconsin women's volleyball losing in the semifinals to Texas. It's tough to keep that streak going into the championship match and whatnot, because there's a lot of pressure on you. And then for the other team, they have nothing left to lose, even though they have the championship to lose. But it's still tough for that undefeated team to just keep it alive, because eventually teams are going to catch on to how the other team plays. And it's happened in volleyball as well. Back in 2018, we had, in the high school volleyball scene, we had Newport Harbor undefeated, and it pains me to bring this up, but we had Newport Harbor undefeated at I think they were 35-0 or 36-0, and then they lost in their Southern Section championship game against Corona Del Mar. Granted, that is a rivalry game, and anything can happen in rivalry games, but I digress. And then in another championship game that they had in the SoCal Regionals, they lost that one to Corona Del Mar as well. But again, they weren't undefeated, but it just went to show you that losing that one match in the big time championship game was what really hurt them going forward. And bottom line is this: if you have an undefeated record going into the postseason, you're in trouble. You probably are in big trouble. And it's actually a good time to bring up another prime example. But to wrap up the 3C2A men's volleyball season, it was a fun season. It was abbreviated and abridged, but at least the players got to play. Nothing would have stunk worse than having another season not happen and then having those players wait until next season, because those players either want to transfer or they want to move on from volleyball or whatnot, because they're obviously going to get their credits in. But the fact that these players got a season is good as gold and whatnot. So thank you to the coaches for allowing the season to happen. I couldn't imagine not having a second straight year, or being an athlete and not having a second straight year, or a second straight season. So actually, at the end of the game, I actually got to interview the winning coach, Ryan Windish, on his team's victory. You won't hear my voice, but he does talk about how his team was able to get the victory and what his team had to do in order to get the win, and the whole season in general.
I think we talked about it today. We started with the Zoom workouts back in the fall, eased our way onto the sand courts, finally back in the gym, and we just told the boys tonight to trust their training, believe in one another, and play their game. My job was done, probably about a week ago. The boys just stuck with what they knew and, trusted themselves, and it showed that they knew how to play some volleyball tonight. We got to play a complete match. First match we had half our team playing well, the other half not so much, and then flipped it the second one. Tonight we needed a whole team effort to take care of the win. We're just happy that the boys were able to compete again. They spent a lot of time off the court, and I'm happy that they're allowed to compete again and enjoy it. They need it, and super proud of them.
So thank you once again to Irvine Valley College men's volleyball coach Ryan Windish for allowing me to interview him after the game. And hopefully we'll get him back on set point in a while. I know he's probably just trying to get back to reality or the off season, but I'll try to get him on set point, and maybe we'll talk about it. As painful as an OCC fan or as an OCC homer, it was painful seeing OCC lose, but IVC just played a complete game. They only played near flawless. Even when they played bad, they were able to make up for it. But the first set was really the turning point of the match. If IVC doesn't win that first set, it's a whole different perspective. I'm not trying to say IVC would have lost, but I'm also trying to say that first set was what tilted all the momentum to IVC. So there's that. So now let's jump to some high school boys volleyball in California, or some CIF volleyball. So remember when I told y'all that Loyola of Los Angeles was undefeated? They were 16-0 going into... they were 14-0 going into the postseason. They won their quarterfinal matchup against Redondo Union, and they advanced to the semifinals. Newport Harbor won their quarterfinal game against San Clemente, and they advanced to the semifinals where they played Loyola. And then the other side of the Division I bracket, we had Corona Del Mar sweeping Mater Dei, and then we also had Miracosta sweeping Orange Lutheran. So now it's time for a little story time with Teran, everybody. So kick your feet up, relax, and enjoy story time with Teran. So I actually went to the boys volleyball matchup between Newport Harbor and Loyola. Yes, I was kind of reporting, but I was kind of there as a spectator. So the first set between Loyola and Newport, it was tight. It looked as if Newport Harbor was going to actually stun Loyola, but then Loyola used its something I need to tell you about Loyola is they're very tall. They have a very tall and athletic team. They have a bunch of Division I bound seniors. They have 2 kids going to USC, and then one kid is just freaking amazing. His name is Dylan Klein. He's a freaking beast at the net, and I'm so glad USC is getting him and not anyone else. But the first set, it was back and forth until Loyola took a 21-16 lead, or 21-17 lead in set number 1. Newport Harbor did all that they could, try to steal that first set, but everything that they did was pretty much going awry, and that's partially because Loyola served the ball really well, and as a result, Loyola took that first set 25-22. And I also gotta give props to the Loyola fans and students that actually made the trip from Los Angeles down to Newport Beach on a Saturday, so my hat's off to them. But in the second set, Newport Harbor was able to get it together. They actually served the ball well, and what they did, and something that they've been doing all season, is they actually hit the ball, or they passed the ball well, which eventually led to their hitting improving, as they eventually took set number 2 25-17, which was a very good surprise. I knew Newport Harbor had a good chance at beating Loyola. It's just, and I know I said Loyola was going to the finals, but I also didn't want to be too much of a homer. So there's that. And then the third set was also it was close to start out the match, and then Newport Harbor just really started to serve the ball well. They had 5 service aces in that set alone. 5. I don't know what went wrong with Loyola's serve receive, but Newport Harbor deserves a lot of credit. When they're serving that good, they're pretty much tough to stop. And then eventually Newport Harbor took that third set 25-18. And I also want to add this there, that their crowd was super into it. Their student section was into it. The fans were into it. Everyone was into seeing Newport Harbor pulling off the upset against the number 1 seed. And then the fourth set, everything was just going Newport Harbor's way. They were passing the ball well. They kept serving the ball really well. Loyola just looked so out of it. And even their players were getting rattled mentally. I think one of their players hit the ball up to the ceiling and got a yellow card. So, or maybe it could have been a fan that threw a volleyball, but honestly, it was just so weird. It was crazy. I'd never seen Loyola so dysfunctioned. I'm not trying to say Loyola was trash, but they just did not look like themselves after that first set. They could not pass for beans. And that's a key in order to beat a team like Newport Harbor. Newport Harbor doesn't have the best team. They don't have the Division I athletes like all these other schools do, but they do have some studs. They have some talented athletes. And like I said, they pass the ball well. I don't know if there's ever been a match where they haven't passed the ball well. And if anything, it was probably in their first meeting between Loyola and Newport, where Loyola just served them off the floor, and Newport just kept shooting themselves in the foot. But regardless, Newport Harbor just dominated that fourth set, winning 25-12 and advancing to their third straight championship game. I was very surprised to see how Newport Harbor adapted. I thought Loyola was going to have a sense of urgency in that fourth set, but at the same time, Loyola just looked out of it. And every time they kept making a mistake, it just kept getting tough for them mentally and physically. They could not adapt to anything Newport Harbor tried to throw at them. And sure enough, Newport Harbor was able to shut the door on them. So Newport Harbor advances to the CIF Southern Section Division I championship match, where they will face Miracosta, which swept Corona Del Mar. Now, this one was a bigger surprise. I thought Corona Del Mar was a little bit better than that. I was told that they're not as deep as they were back a few years ago, but that's because of That's because they got hit really hard in graduation. They lost 16 seniors on their team. It was 15 or 16, but regardless, they lost quite a bit to graduation from last year, and they still have a talented team, and I don't think anyone's going to underestimate them when it comes to the SoCal Regionals, but they got swept by Miracosta. I know it's tough to win at Miracosta just because they have this really big renovated gym. It's like a college gymnasium, but I thought Corona Del Mar was going to pick up at least one set, but I guess that's it. I guess it's tough to win at a big-time gym such as that, and also Miracosta is very talented. They have a lot of talented players. Their middle blockers are huge. But they're not like quick. Like compared to Loyola's middle blockers, they're rather slow and rugged. But I think when it comes to like Newport Harbor and Miracosta, anything can happen between those two. Like it's quite astounding. And these are the same two teams that met in the championship match back in 2019. So it's going to be quite interesting to say the least. And also, both of these teams have beaten each other once already this season. Miracosta won on the road, or Miracosta won in its gymnasium against Newport Harbor in straight sets, while Newport Harbor won in straight sets in its own gymnasium against Miracosta, which was quite astounding. So this is basically going to be the rubber match, and honestly, it could go either way between these two teams. I'm not going to make a prediction just because I'm really bad at making predictions. I thought Loyola was going to make the championship game. I was totally wrong. And I also thought OCC was going to beat IVC. No. I was 1 for 3 when it came to calling these types of matchups. Like, I can't predict it correctly. And I'm not going to try to jinx anyone, and I'm not going to risk getting dunked on by like some of these other fans. I am not saying I got dunked on, but I just don't want to like jinx any other team. So regardless, it's going to be a fun matchup on Saturday between Newport Harbor and Miracosta. The match is actually going to be played at Miracosta. Unfortunately, CIF is basically implemented home sites instead of neutral sites when it comes to their championship match, but that's partially because of COVID, and we can't blame them. Like, I think it's the best thing to do. I just think it's kind of tough, but here's the thing. I think Miracosta's gymnasium is basically the equivalent of a college gymnasium, and it's the perfect gymnasium to have. Had Corona Del Mar and Newport Harbor met in the championship match, they would have had their game at Edison because Edison has a bigger gymnasium. Keep in mind, Edison is in Huntington Beach, not like Edison in Fresno. But it would have been a bigger gymnasium, and I think it would have been a better site to have because Newport Harbor and Corona Del Mar both have low ceilings, which makes it very tough to pass. Whereas Edison is kind of like a college gymnasium. Like, I haven't been to Miracosta's big gymnasium, but that's going to change on Saturday. But we'll see what happens. Like, it could go either way. Miracosta's last loss was against Newport Harbor, while Newport Harbor's last loss was to Corona Del Mar. Ever since then, Newport Harbor has not lost a match. I think they've won like 6 in a row, I want to say. They beat Laguna, they beat Costa, they beat Marina, Edison, Huntington Beach, CDM, Laguna, San Clemente, Loyola. 9 in a row. Wow, I wasn't even close. So yeah, Newport Harbor's won 9 in a row, which again they had lost 2 in a row prior, but now they've won 9 in a row, and that's probably the hottest team right now. So anyone who thinks that Newport Harbor is going to be a speed bump for Miracosta is dead wrong. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a homer, but I'm also saying that because they have a lot of talent on their team. And again, it's not Division I talent. Only one of those players are going to be playing Division I volleyball, but it's really impressive that they've kept this going. And they only have one player from their 2019 national championship team. which is kind of astounding if you ask me. So, and then that one player actually didn't get to play a whole lot. He was just on the bench as a call-up from JV. So there's that. So Miracosta, on the other hand, has won They've won 8 straight. So Miracosta has won 8 straight ever since they lost to Newport Harbor. So something's got to give, and someone's going to be making history. Either Miracosta is going to be winning their first CIF championship since 2012, or Newport Harbor is going to be repeating as champions, which I don't know if that's ever happened, and I don't think it's happened. It almost happened back in 2000, but unfortunately CDM was a thing. But I will also say this, it's going to be a fun championship match, and I'm going to be interested to see if Newport Harbor can actually beat Miracosta at Miracosta. It is doable, but that gymnasium is huge. But I think Newport Harbor has a better chance now that they've played in the Miracosta gymnasium, now that they have a lot of momentum, and now that they know how Miracosta plays. They know what to expect when it comes to Miracosta. But the same can be said for Miracosta as well, and they don't have to travel as much as Newport Harbor. They don't have to travel, period, unlike Newport Harbor. But Manhattan Beach isn't too far. Yes, Miracosta is in Manhattan Beach. It's not like in Costa Mesa or anything. So there's that. But I am excited for seeing those two teams. One more thing before we head to a break. I actually do want to give a shout out to another former set point guest, Craig Pizzanti and Huntington Beach Boys Volleyball, as their team advanced to the CIF Southern Section Division II Championship as they defeated Servite in 5 sets. Servite is coached by Matt Marujo, yet another set point guest, as Huntington Beach will be playing at Santa Barbara for the chance to become Division II champions. I know Division II isn't as glamorous as Division I, but a championship is a championship. As former set point guest Dave Huber said, you're not giving the championship back. You basically had to work through your blood, sweat, and tears in order to win that championship. And for Huntington Beach, they've actually had to go the long route. They actually did not get a first round bye. They actually had to play in the first round, then they played in the second round and the quarterfinals, and they had to outlast a scrappy Servite team, which beat them earlier in the season. So Huntington Beach is going to get a chance to win their first championship since 2015. So there's that right there. And if they win, I'll try to have a recap of that match, and heck, maybe I'll try to get Craig Pizzanti back on the show to talk about that. So there's that right there. We are going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some volleyball transfer news, and we'll also talk a little USA volleyball on the men's and women's side, as they're partaking in a FIBA event. But regardless, you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with segment number 2 of Set Point. You can check out all of our amazing shows right here on iSports Radio. You can check out my boy Marcus Los Great and Gloves Off every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. He does a great job with Gloves Off, and he's here to give you what you want and what you need. And he does a fantastic job. And he talks about boxing, combat sports. The list goes on and on. And then you can also check out Bases Loaded every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on StreamYard. We also have lots of other shows dedicated to other sports and dedicated to other cities as well, such as Southern California, which is my SoCal Supreme Sports show. We have a show dedicated to Pittsburgh. We have a show dedicated to Kansas City, Indianapolis. We even have a show dedicated to motorsports as well. So there's that. Without any further delay, let's get on into segment number 2 of Set Point. And let's talk about some NCAA transfer news. If I could find the... Here it is. Okay, so here's the list. The last transfer I left off with was Brenna Runnels, as she transferred from Colorado State, and she's in the transfer portal, so there's that. So continuing on from the transfer news from last week, we have Makai Nwoke, as she has transferred from NC State all the way to New Mexico, so she'll be playing in the WAC, so good for her. And then another transfer that happened was Jacksonville State's Zoe Gonzalez, formerly of Wake Forest, has transferred to Jacksonville State, and will be going from Power Conference to non-Power 5 conference. So, Power 5 conference to non-Power 5 conference. So, she went from Wake Forest to Jacksonville State, which is cool. And then into the transfer portal, we had Leilani Dodson, who is transferring from BYU. She has not decided where she is going, but we'll soon find out where she heads to. So, there's that right there for Dodson. And then completing her transfer transaction, we have Hannah Thompson transferring from Notre Dame to Maryland. She is a 5'9" middle blocker. She is a graduate student, by the way, so she's taking her 5th year of eligibility that the NCAA has granted, and she is going to be playing for Maryland. So there's that. And by the way, Zoe Gonzalez is a 6'3" middle blocker, so Jacksonville State's going to be getting a lot of height, and then Makai Nwoke is a 6'1" middle blocker, and she's a graduate student as well. So, some good height right there. Anyway, then we have Amethyst Harper transferring from Montana to San Jose State. She is a 5'10" sophomore outside hitter, so the Spartans are getting some help on the outside, so there's that. And then Idaho State's Celestial Miller is transferring after one season with Idaho State, so she is in the transfer portal. Then we have Emma Reynolds transferring from Cal Poly over to North Carolina. She is a 6'1" setter, and she is a redshirt junior, so good stuff right there. And UNC actually isn't wasn't a bad team. It's just that they were pretty average against the top-tier competition. So the Tar Heels are getting some help, which is cool, I guess. And then we have Allie French transferring from UNLV over to SMU, as she will be a Mustang. She is a graduate student who is 6 feet, and she is an outside hitter and opposite hitter. So, good stuff. Then we have Morgan Verheyen, who is transferring from Buffalo after 2 seasons. So, she is in the transfer portal, and she will be exploring her options on where she will be heading. And then, this is probably the biggest news right here. So, I'm probably going to butcher her name, but Gui Diouf, who is a 5'11" outside hitter, and she is going to be an up-and-coming sophomore. She is transferring from Oklahoma to Pitt. That is huge news right there, considering Pitt is returning a good chunk of their players. They return 2 of their players from last season, as the 2 players that I mentioned are going to be taking their 5th year of eligibility and coming back to Pitt. So, and with adding Diouf, then that's going to just boost Pitt's firepower even further. And also, Gui Diouf was the Southwest Region Freshman of the Year, so Pitt is going to look pretty good next year. Like, especially when they actually got out of the Sweet 16 or the second round. So Pitt is looking very promising. And then we have Claudia Dillon, a former Missouri volleyball player, as she is transferred to UCF, so she'll be playing for the Knights. She is a 6'2" sophomore middle blocker, so she'll have about 2 or 3 years left of eligibility going forward. So there's that for Claudia Dillon. She is actually a very good player. She was one of the key pieces for Missouri who helped them make the NCAA tournament. So there's that. Then we have in the transfer portal, we have Anouk Van Noord, who is transferring for grad school as she just finished up her undergrad. She is transferring from UMBC, so she is looking to explore her options. I think she's going to be going for there. She has 1 more year left as she's going for grad school. So there's that. And then this one actually caught my eye. This one I know who she is personally. This player is actually Lauren Tarnoff, and I actually talked about her early in the fall and how she was a big impact player, or she was going to be a big impact player for Miami. However, she has actually entered the transfer portal, and she has actually found herself a new home, as Lauren Tarnoff will be playing volleyball at the University of Notre Dame, which was huge. She is a middle blocker, and she a 6'2" middle blocker, and she is going to be an up-and-coming sophomore. And I think she's going to make a big impact for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame returns most of its players other than Hannah Thompson, as we know it, because with her, she did make a good impact with Miami. I don't know why she transferred. Maybe because she just didn't like Miami. But I think I kind of know the reason why, but I'm not going to say it on air, just because I don't want to put the incorrect words into everyone's head. But regardless, this is big for Notre Dame. And it's also big time for Lauren as well. I think she could really make a great impact for Notre Dame, especially since they were pretty light on their middle blockers. They just lost Hannah Thompson to University of Maryland, and now Tarnoff comes into the mix, and she's going to make a huge impact. So, but you also have other middles that could be coming in, but I could see Lauren Tarnoff working for a starting spot at the middle blocker position. She's not going to be playing outside hitter or opposite, because because Notre Dame has a lot of that coming in, and they have a lot of returning talent at the outside hitter, such as Charlie Nigo. So, and then they also have Caroline Muth as well. So, this is going to be Lauren Tarnoff going to Notre Dame was a big time signing right there. It's not as big as most people think, but I could see Tarnoff making a huge impact at the middle blocker position. So there's that. Then, I know I spent a little time on that, but we have Kyla Newsom transferring from southeastern Louisiana to Wichita State, so she's going to be a shocker now. She is a 5'11" outside hitter, and she's going to be an up-and-coming sophomore as she is a freshman, so that's some news right there. Then in the portal, we have Yenny Murillo, who is continuing her career after her All-Western Athletic Conference from GCU, and she actually graduated from GCU, so once again, she's taking the extra year of eligibility, and she is going elsewhere from Grand Canyon. I'm sorry, Marcus, but this is kind of what athletes do after 4 years, so there's that. Then, transferring, we have Maha Kaiser transferring from USC over to Arizona. Maha Kaiser is actually a beach volleyball player, and she'll be playing beach volleyball for the Wildcats. So she's going to still be in the Pac-12, but she's going to be in the desert as she'll be playing for Arizona. But I could see her making a big impact. I don't think she got to play a whole lot when it came to USC this season, so I kind of understand why. Maybe a change of scenery will help her, so USC versus Arizona will be interesting. And then we have Madison Lawler transferring from Southern Miss and transferring to Abilene Christian. And she will be playing volleyball at Abilene Christian. It also says she was a beach volleyball player at Southern Miss, and she is also a libero at Southern Miss as well. So now she's going to be transferring to Abilene Christian. She is a grad student, so she'll get one more year of eligibility. Then back to the Pac-12, we have middle blocker Anastasia Svetnik, as she, being a middle blocker, is transferring from Oregon State, which I kind of understand why. I'm not going to try to be mean to Oregon State, but they're kind of not the greatest Pac-12 team in the world. So I understand why she transferred, but I digress. So we'll see where she lands. And according to college volleyball transfers, she was a key contributor for the Beavers this past season, so there's that. So we'll have to keep an eye on her and where she lands. And then Abby Hughes is transferring from Grand Canyon after 3 years of playing beach volleyball there, as she is transferring to Florida International. So she's going from Florida International to Grand Canyon. My apologies. She's still going to play beach volleyball there. She is a senior, and I guess it says she's a senior, but I think she's going to be an up-and-coming senior, so she'll get 2 years of eligibility if needed. If she wants to take that 5th year eligibility, then cool. But Abby Hughes is going to Grand Canyon University after 3 years of Florida International, so there's that, and she'll be playing beach volleyball. And then we have Erica Kostelak, who is transferring from Creighton over to Cleveland State. She is a 6'2" outside hitter, and she is a graduate student, so she'll be using her extra year of eligibility there. So there's that, and that's pretty much that for the college volleyball transfers. I'm pretty sure this is going to get updated sooner rather than later, and it wouldn't shock me if we had another transfer after set point went off the air. So there is that right there, and that's that for the transfers. We do have one more thing to talk about, and then I'll let y'all go, and that is the U.S. women's and men's team, as the women's team is actually 4-0 as of right now. They're playing in something called the VNL 2021. I embarrassingly don't know what the VNL is. The Volleyball Nations League. So the women are playing in the Volleyball Nations League, and I'm stupid for not knowing that. The nerve of me. Anyway, the U.S. women's team is playing in the Volleyball Nations League, and they're actually 4-0. And today they just won 3-0 with a sweep over Serbia. They won 25-20, 25-16, and 25-12. So that's good for that's good for them right there. And I'm going to try to find the women's standings, and I don't know why they have the men's standings. Hold on, everybody. Let me check. Yeah, the women are 4-0, as well as Turkey. The women have 12 points, and Turkey has 10 points. So theoretically, USA has the lead in terms of the standings, but USA and Turkey are both 4-0, and as their first match, they beat Dominican Republic in 3-0. They won 25-20, 25-21, 25-12. Then against Canada, they won in straight sets. They won the first set 26-24, the second set 25-20 or 25-15, and then they won the third set 25-10. Then against Brazil, they won that in 4 sets. They won the first set 25-17, the second set 25-19. Brazil won set 3 25-23, and then USA won set 4 25-22. And then today, like I said, they swept Serbia, and tomorrow they play the Netherlands in round 2. Then they play Thailand on Wednesday. Then they play Germany on Sunday. Then they play South Korea next Monday. Then they play Italy next Tuesday. Then they play Belgium on June 12th. Then Japan on June 13th. Then Turkey on June 14th, which is going to be a huge match. Then they play Poland on June 18th. Then Russia on June 19th. And then they close out with China on June 20th. I don't know if there's going to be any playoffs or some sort of like postseason tournament, but I will let everybody know if there's anything happening regarding them. So there's that. And as for the men are 2-1 when it comes to the Volleyball Nations League, as they beat Canada in their first match 25-17, 26-24, and 25-20. In their second match, USA actually lost to Brazil in straight sets, 25-23, 25-23, 25-19. That was actually a punch to the face. But in their second match, or in their third match yesterday, they beat Argentina. They lost the first set 25-23, and then they won the next 3 sets 25-21, 25-15, and then 25-19. And then Thursday, USA plays Russia, then they play Poland on Friday, Australia Saturday, Iran next Wednesday, Germany next Thursday, Serbia next Friday, Italy on June 15th, France on June 16th, Netherlands on June 17th, Slovenia on June 21st, Bulgaria on June 22nd, and they close out the Nations League with a matchup against Japan on June 23rd. So that is that for the U.S. men's national team, which is playing in the Volleyball Nations League. So the women are still undefeated, while the men have only lost 1 match. Hopefully they can still run the table and they can finish first. Again, I don't know if there's any tournament regarding this, or maybe they're just having like an exhibition match, but regardless, this is good for the U.S. National teams as the Olympics get closer and closer, and I'm looking forward to this. It just means we get more content for Set Point, meaning Set Point isn't going to be going off the air anytime soon unless I have to take a hiatus or anything like that. And if anything, I will let y'all know, but I do have plenty of content for y'all, so it is going to be some fun times. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in. iSports Radio isn't done for today, as we have another show going live at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick that's going to be coming on in about 20 or so minutes. Or I'm sorry, not 20 or so minutes, 40 or so minutes. So I'm going to be passing the baton off to Mr. Adam Karnick. Definitely do tune into Chi-Town Weekly because Adam does a fantastic job with his show, and he does not disappoint, so definitely do listen in, as he's going to be talking about the Chicago Sky, he's going to be talking about the Chicago Bears, the Chicago White Sox, a little Chicago Cubs, and then he'll be talking about some other things happening in Chicago. And one more thing, I know I mentioned this earlier in the show, but I definitely do want to give a big thank you to our veterans, to those that have served. I want to say to those that are currently serving, thank you for your service. It really, really means a lot. And whether you're serving in the military or the Navy or any sort of armed forces, we definitely do appreciate your service and your work. And without you, I probably wouldn't be talking. So thank you once again to those that are serving, and I salute you. Without any further delay, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. And also, it's almost time for me to grab some grub. You feel me? Thank you all once again for tuning in to Set Point this week. I greatly appreciate y'all. I appreciate the chat room for popping in. I appreciate Davidson Crooks for coming in for a little bit. I appreciate my boy Marcus Los Great popping in and listening in for as long as he can. I appreciate you. Definitely do check out Marcus's show, Gloves Off. And I appreciate you listeners, whether you're listening on the playback or you're listening on podcast form, whatever you're listening to or wherever you're listening to or however you're listening to or whenever you're listening to, I definitely do appreciate you tuning in to Set Point. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourselves a great rest of the week. Have yourselves a great rest of the day. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy some volleyball action. And for the real this time, I'll be seeing you later on this week for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Have a great night, everybody.